Welcome to Sean's Hangar, where I talk about cars for some reason, and also airplanes sometimes. This is a 1960s Ford Mustang. Is it actually worth owning one today? Let's find out. My dad and I bought this car a little over 11 years ago, and we've been working on it off and on since, and we've done a lot to it. Here's a picture of it when we first got it. It was white, had a black vinyl top and an automatic, and it was just kind of a grandma commuter. And that's exactly who owned this car. She bought it new in 1965 at Phil Long Ford, which is still a dealership here in Colorado Springs. So that's really cool. That's why we left the tag on there on the back. Since we've owned it, we've repainted it, obviously in this beautiful green. It's ivy green, so it's a little darker than the dark Highland green that's on the Bullitt Mustang. And obviously we put a 5-speed in it, which has really woken it up. It goes good, man, and that sound is great. I mean, this thing sounds so good. Quick answer, yes, it is worth owning one of these in 2023 and 2024, and as long as we have gasoline, because this car is fantastic. We're getting a little bit low on the sun here, so it's not the best lighting, and the audio sucks too because I don't have a lavalier mic yet, but we'll get there. And you put it in 5th gear and it just quiets down. That's one of the reasons we put the 5-speed in it, is because the 3-speed in it that we had before was the 3rd gear was 1-to-1, and so you didn't get, it wasn't very good highway gearing, especially after we put a 355 Posse in the rear. It wasn't a good highway cruiser at that time, and so that was one of the reasons we put the 5-speed in. But I mean, come on, it's pretty obvious why we put the 5-speed in, because you can do this. Pretty great. There's a lot of reasons to own one of these. This is a great weekend car. I've taken my wife out on dates in this car. It gets smiles everywhere you go. People love it. It's just a simple, like, talk about analog. Everyone's obsessed with analog these days. It doesn't get much more analog than this. Everyone's crazy about cars from the 1980s, the 90s, the 2000s. I feel like cars from the 1970s and earlier have fallen out of favor. I think it's because people don't want to deal with carburetors and stuff like that. And I mean, really, it's not all that hard. You just got to learn about it. I mean, I've rebuilt a carburetor before. It's not that tough. People think these things are hard to work on, but they're really actually pretty easy to work on. I actually just broke this quarter window back here the other day, and I just took out the rear seat and took out the side panel, and I got it to stay up. I didn't get it fixed because I need a new little plastic bushing in there, but it's just simple hand tools, screwdriver and a couple of sockets, and you have the back seat out, and it took me about maybe 45 minutes, and you can get parts for these things super easy. CJ Pony Parts has been around for years, and Dynacorn manufactures brand new bodies for these things. So with those two combined, you could probably build a brand new 1960s Mustang out of parts ordered online. I mean, sure, it'd be really expensive, but that just goes to show you the amount of parts that they make for these things. I'm sure when these things are 100 years old, they'll still be on the road, some of them. They made over 600,000 of these in 1966, and actually that's the highest production year they ever had. It's the most that they ever made in one year for the Mustang. So they are out there. They're not rare. In fact, I found a few on Craigslist the other day for around 20,000, and that was for a really good driver quality car with a stick and a V8. I'm doing 65 right now, and it's a little loud in here, but it's not unbearable. It offers a lot. You could use it every day if you wanted to. And this car in this condition is probably worth about 30,000-ish, give or take. I don't know. If you ask me, I know lots of people wouldn't agree with me, but if you ask me, it'd be hard for me to choose between this and like a BMW M5, like an E39 M5. This car has an 8-track player. You just pop an old 8-track in there, Beach Boys, Beatles, something like that, and brings you right back to the 60s. I think enthusiasts are really missing out on this genre of cars. These fun 60s pony cars, muscle cars, cruisers even, they offer a lot for what they can be had for. the whole stigma around American cars in the 1960s is that they don't handle. Actually, American cars in general, and this is where they got it from. But this car doesn't handle all that bad, really. One thing you certainly can't beat is the styling. I mean, come on, like this thing is really, really good looking. This is a great looking car, and they can't make cars that look like this these days because of all the regulations and everything. Your headlights have to be a certain height, blah, blah, blah. You gotta have reflectors on the sides, whatever. And don't get me wrong, like, definitely lots of cars look good these days. I really do think that. But it's not this. Now, while you could daily this car, I probably wouldn't want to. It does have a really great heater, but it is rear-wheel drive, and you probably want to keep it nice. You probably wouldn't want to drive it in the snow, no traction control, any of that. Oh yeah, and the wipers don't work on this car. So that would be another thing. That's pretty much it though. Really everything else worked, even though, you know, there's not really much tech in this car. It's got an AM, FM radio, 8-track player, a heater, a few gauges, headlights, a horn, and a glove box, and indicators, and that's about it. Although, one thing it does have that modern cars do not have is these. Still to this day, I do not know why they got rid of them. It basically negates the need for air conditioning in anything under about 85 degrees. You just pop it open, and the way it's designed is you got air coming in this side, and then it creates a low pressure and sucks air out this way. It's a little chilly today, so I will close that. But yeah, vent windows. What the heck happened to vent windows? So not only is this car pretty reliable, you get great parts support, but you actually can work on it yourself. That's one thing that's going away with the modern day cars. As they get more and more complicated, you need someone who's got more and more knowledge in order to work on them. I like when you can actually reach into the engine bay. Any engine bay where you can see the ground is one that usually it's pretty easy to work on. You can just do that and it's a lot of fun. So take like my Audi. So what happened with that, I have a 2004 Audi S4, and the radiator sprung a leak, and it was because the electric cooling fan disintegrated for some reason. I'm not really sure why that happened, but it threw blades and plastic everywhere, and it sliced a hole in the radiator, and it started leaking coolant everywhere. And to replace the radiator on that, you got to take the whole front bumper off. You can get away with not taking the whole front end off for the radiator, but not for the fan in the back. So I actually had to unbolt the entire front end of the car just to replace the radiator fan. You wouldn't have to do that in this. I mean, the radiator just sits there right on the core support. It's just like right there. I guess people these days don't really want to work on their own cars. They just want to take it to the dealer and have them deal with it. But for the old school people like me, that's what I prefer. It's one of the many reasons I like this car. This car is surprisingly comfortable, and it drives surprisingly like a modern car. The only thing you got to worry about is the carburetor. Sometimes, I mean, it might be the altitude up here, but sometimes when it gets really warm, you gotta like give it some gas. But that's like a really easy fix too. You just take the air cleaner off, and there's a little screw, and you adjust the idle on the carburetor. And that sound, I mean, just cruising around, you just don't get tired of that. Wow, it's a little backed up there. Gosh, glad I'm not going that way. You can add all of the modern amenities to this car. Really, you can get fuel injection, you can get air conditioning. You can get Bluetooth radio. I mean, you can really make it into what a modern day car would be. And you still get this awesome style. The engine in these is a 289 cubic inch or 4.7 liter V8. Ford put this motor in a lot of their cars back in the 60s. It eventually evolved into the 302, which was eventually the 5.0 in the Fox body Mustang. Didn't really change all that much, just got a little bit bigger displacement, fuel injection, a few other things here and there. Basically the same motor all the way up through 95. Back in the day, the GT wasn't necessarily the V8. You did have to get a V8 if you got the GT, but you could get the highest horsepower V8 without it being a GT. So you had 4 engine options in 66. You had the straight 6, which was the sluggish one that Grandma's got, except this one. This one has a V8. Or you had 3 different V8 options. One of them was a 2-barrel carburetor V8, which is what this came with originally. We swapped it out to a 4-barrel carburetor and intake, and then we put a mild cam in it, and we got roller rockers. It's probably making somewhere between 250, 275 is what we're thinking, but we never had a dyno. And then the next step up would have been a 225 horsepower 4-barrel carburetor V8. The top dog in the day was the 271 horsepower K-Code V8, the famous Hypo 289. That was the fast option until the 1967 model year when you got the 390, and then I think you could get the 427 or the 428 Cobra Jet if you went Shelby. That's when it really got crazy with those big blocks, but this small block does the job. It's great. Gee, this is a great time to film, isn't it? In traffic. See, everyone loves it. Another thing that you don't get nowadays is this car, the whole car kind of shakes when it's sitting at idle. Like the gear shifter's just shaking around. It's kind of shaking the whole car. No! Well, maybe we will just give it a little gas when it turns green. I think that's what you must do when you were first in line at a red light. So originally this car had that 3-speed automatic. We put this Tremec T5 in it, and it's really great. This car would have originally come with either a 3-speed manual or a 4-speed manual, but having the 5-speed really gives you the best of both worlds. This car doesn't have power anything. Well, no, that's not true. This car has power steering and power brakes, and that's it. It originally had 4-wheel drums with manual brakes, and that was just scary. So we put discs on the front, and we put a dual reservoir master cylinder, and that's a great mod to make it a little bit safer. The power steering works great. I've also driven these with manual steering, but since the steering wheel's so big, here, wait, actually, let's go. So fun. But manual windows, of course, power windows weren't even an option. Lots of things were options on this car. The only standard features, I believe, were bucket seats, a radio, and a heater, and maybe this driver's side mirror. The passenger side mirror was definitely an extra cost option. No power locks, no power anything other than the steering and the brakes. This is just such a pure experience. Such a pure experience. And it's such a classy car too. This year in particular, 1966, it has such classic lines, and it looks great. The fastback's the one that everyone wants, but I think the coupe is a really good looking car too. Now if you had a convertible, that's another story. That'd be great. Back when these cars were new, the base price was somewhere, I think, like $2,300, $2,400, something like that. That got you a straight 6 base model, of course, but I believe this particular car sold new for $3,481 or somewhere around there. This is how much that is today. I think that's a pretty good bargain. And it seems like they've stayed around that price range for a nice example. Here we go, getting on I-25. My favorite. We're actually gonna drive by the place where this car was bought new. I didn't realize we were gonna do that on the way up to Woodland Park, but that's perfect. Phil Long Ford is just over here. When we bought the car in 2012, it had that badge on the back, and when we had it repainted, we said just leave it on there because the dealership still exists and we still live in Colorado Springs. They still have the old school sign on the hill. That's just great. We've taken this car to the dealership a couple of times just to watch the salesman freak out. It's kind of fun. Wow. I did not realize that I'd be going up the mountain here in rush hour traffic. Now, don't get me wrong, modern cars are great and they make better dailies. But man, there's something about this. My Audi is definitely a much better daily driver for Colorado Springs, considering we get a lot of snow here and it's all-wheel drive. It's also faster, but I would take this over that car any day. Any day. This car is so much more fun. I think that once enthusiasts figure out how cool these cars are, I think they will start going back up, but right now they are pretty steady and going down even a little bit. And with inflation, that means they've gone down a decent amount. I think they're well worth it. Don't get a collector one though. Don't get one that is like so nice that you're not gonna want to drive it. Don't get one that's like $80,000. Get one that's like 15 or 20 grand and drive it and have fun. These things are so versatile. You can put whatever you want in there. A lot of people put the 347 stroker in here, which is a stroked version of the 302, and really wakes this car up a lot. It's hard to put a big block in these cars because the engine bay was never designed for that, but this is such a fun platform. You can do a lot with it, and it looks awesome. So, like, it's great. We have white walls on this car, and that's actually a factory look. That's the way they would have been from the factory. When we first got it, the tires that were on it were really old, and so we put raised white lettering tires on it for kind of a muscle car look. I don't know how well it's coming across on camera, but this is a gorgeous drive. At sunset like this, it's great. This is where it starts. You get this beautiful red rock, beautiful mountains, and right now the sun looks so nice with the clouds. It's just such a nice drive. So that fourth gear right there, that's 1-to-1. That's where the third gear in the automatic would have been. See how unbearable that is? And we're at 60 right now. This would have been highway cruising at 60. At like, I don't know, this car doesn't have a tachometer, but that sounds like 3,000, 3,500 maybe. That's pretty high. And then you put it in fifth, it's gone. And it can even climb these big hills in fifth. It's got a lot of torque. And I know I'm just keeping up with traffic here, but like, you can still get the idea. Granted, there's a Jeep Wrangler going faster than me taking the same corner, so whatever. It feels planted. I mean, I'm not going all that fast, but it doesn't give me anxiety. Here's a clip from another drive. I took it around a roundabout. It's a little bit better. It's a nice third gear pull. It's not fast, but it's quick and it's fun. The 1960s are just such a slept-on era these days, with everyone being all crazy about the 80s and 90s and modern day stuff. I really think they're missing out, and this is a great car, and I think that they're really affordable and a lot of fun. So that's my take. Yes, a 1960s Ford Mustang is indeed worth it in 2023. Thank you guys so much for watching.